This is the Reef planning, the Orchestrator. Um, we have our initial topics here in this other pad. So the topics that are on there right now are the things that the team sort of come up with. We were talking last weekly about some things we knew we wanted to get in. So we have those as sort of starting points. We'll discuss those ones, and then if anyone has any other topics that want us to consider trying to get in for R, we'll do that as well. So actually, yeah, maybe I'll just share my screen.
Does this assume that the monolithic blob has basically been restructured and reformatted into, more of a modular approach? Because I don't see that listed, I guess, or maybe I just read it too quick.
That's supposed to be the Ceph ADM binary refactoring. That topic is meant to be.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Okay. Thank
Yeah,
you.
we do have that one on there.
Beautiful. So it's not done yet then, is what it's been.
No.
PR has been written. It's just okay. We got more work to do. Beautiful.
Yeah, I can even actually link in the other pad and I think about it the pull requests. Go find it real quick.
Okay.
Yeah, so it was mostly done, and then what ended up happening is we got too close to the Quincy release, and we didn't think we were gonna get it in for the release, and it seemed like too big of a change to be introducing in a minor release.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of got pushed back. There it is. There you go. Yeah, there you go. Pull request, the work in progress one. Right. Yeah, I'll share my screen so we can just look at the iPad there. Right, is that working? You guys see what I'm sharing?
Yep. Yes.
Yes.
Very cool. Yeah, so we'll start with going through this list, and then if anyone of the other things want to bring up for what we should do for Reef, we'll do that after. Starting with the agent stabilization stuff. So overview that, people who don't know what that is. The agent is essentially a non-containerized daemon that would be running on each host. Ceph ADM would automatically deploy if you like enable setting. And essentially the point is that it speeds up our metric gathering. So like state of all the daemons running on the host, the devices, all those things. We have to gather those. And right now the way it works is part of our service loop. Every single like 10 minutes or so, it'll go and it'll refresh these things. So it has to SH into the host and gather them. And it's pretty slow once you get to a large number of hosts, especially because just in general, gathering the state of all the daemons can be slow, and the set volume commands we have to run to get all the devices is slow. We have this whole agent feature where it'll gather it for us and it'll send it over HTTP to the manager, and so we don't have to spend so much time in the server loop doing that, and it seems to make it so we can get those metrics more frequently. And this makes the server loop run faster so we can get to the actual operations quicker instead of having to spend so much time refreshing all of that information. So we have it as it exists in Quincy already, like it's there, but there's a lot of stabilization work that has to happen on there. I know for one thing, there's problems with the hosts going offline still. I think it's if the host comes offline and goes back up, there was some issue where the manager would report the agent as down when it wasn't really down. Just generally a bunch of smaller things that have to be sort of worked into it. We have to handle, so we want to do that stuff. Then for the additional features, I think we want to do stuff like being able to deploy daemons with it, because it has a copy of the Ceph ADM binary. And so theoretically, it should be able to do all the sort of actions we would do on the host normally, like deploying daemons and gathering information and all that stuff. So we should be able to get it so it can actually do that as well. And if we can do that, we can sort of make a lot of how the Ceph ADM Manager module works asynchronous, and it could really speed things up Um, that was one of the big things we wanted to do for R is try to actually incorporate this a bit more and get it properly tested and everything. Because right now it's sort of experimental, and we just have it disabled by default. We do have some tests for it in tautology at least, um, but it needs to be fleshed out. It also needs to be documented. There's no documentation either.
A moment ago, you said it's not based on a container. Is that correct?
Yeah, it just runs directly on the host.
Yeah, so that's one thing we could possibly add to the list if you want to containerize it. It would probably need to be a privileged container, but once you're a privileged container, it can always reach outside of its container context, and it might simplify the packaging and delivery.
Right. I'm trying to remember for sure if there was a reason why we didn't want to containerize it. Um, I don't remember exactly. Maybe
Sure.
it might have just been simpler at the time
Yeah,
because we were running binary commands.
I'll admit I'm a containerize all the things sort of person, but yeah, we can discuss it as an individual topic later.
All right. Yeah, it's at least something we can at least come up or talk about the idea of it once these other sort of things about it are set up properly. Um, it could be a container that could work. So those are the main things for this one. Something we were sort of planning to do. We wanted to actually do originally as part of Quincy. It's kind of come up halfway through Pacific came out about doing this, and then it sort of got implemented, like the basic version of it, but it never really got stabilized or properly brought in. So it's sort of just in this state right now. We want to get that in for Reef to do that.
Also, we discussed it at some point. I don't remember exactly when, but we discussed it like to add some kind of heartbeats mechanism in the agent.
Oh yeah, for the testing offline host.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because right now when the agent was on, the one that we were testing offline host with it was if they just didn't report, we would have that in there, which is I guess sort of similar to a heartbeat. We wanted a more explicit heartbeat. So there's a normal reporting and there's just a heartbeat that should come in no matter what. If we don't get that, then we know that it's offline. So we want to do something like that as well. So that is a sub point here. Like that. All right. That was all I had for this topic. Does anyone have anything else want to talk about with the agent for now? No. All right. We'll move on to the next thing we have on here, which is the serve loop transparency. So right now, the way that a lot of the Ceph ADM sort of notifications work for when something goes wrong is it has these events. Guess there's nothing more this topic than the other one, but they go together. So there's daemon events and there's service events, and then there's obviously just the random logging that the serve loop does. We found that all of these things are sort of hard for people to access. They're not really like intuitive. Like if something goes wrong in the serve loop, it might log an event for like daemon manager or whatever, and you specifically go in, you run something like something like that. And then it would have, and if there were any events for that daemon, like anything went wrong, they would show up there. But we found people like aren't going to check that by default, especially because there's a lot of services, a lot of daemons. So even though we have this information stored somewhere, hard to find currently. And so we want to have better ways of displaying this sort of information to people. So on top of just the events for the daemons and the services, also just in general what the serve loop is doing. So say like we were talking earlier about how we have to like refresh all the daemons and we have to refresh all the devices and things. And then after that we can go do like X, Y, and Z. Really what those things are, what we're doing in the background, there should be some way for the user to see what that is. So it could help for a lot of the debugging cases. So like say if you had something that was hanging, like we had that issue before where there was some Ceph volume command hanging that we were trying to run, you'd at least be able to see like, oh, this is what it's trying to do right now. This must be hanging somewhere. Make the debugging a bit easier. And also some sort of history to these things. So you could just see these are the actions that it ran, say in the last serve loop when it ran through, it did these things. That can be useful for debugging because then you could see if something that you wanted to happen isn't happening, then at least you know why. So you want to have stuff like that. Thinking some CLI commands that give you again the history of what the server was doing recently, just some like short snippets, maybe something to say what we're doing currently, stuff like that, and then some way to make the daemon and the service events more visible. Maybe we just need some like a CLI command just for viewing events in general, and we'll just list out all the known events we have recently, so we can see all the errors that have happened for all the daemons, and then you can sort through that to find what you're looking for rather than having to specifically go look for a certain daemon and then check if that daemon has an event. It's just easier just to look through the existing events that happen. So yes, that's one of the big topics. I guess these 2 points sort of go together. Is we want to make the debugging and everything easier. We found that people have some trouble finding some of the problems when things do go wrong. Right. Does anyone have any?
Yeah, where do the serve loop logs, where are they, where can I currently find them? Are they in the Ceph manager logs?
Yeah, I think they all go under the Ceph Manager logs currently. Normally when I look at them, I'll usually watch them live, or I'll just do like if you do like a Ceph log last, I'll do something like this. I think that's a command, and then it'll just show the last like it doesn't have to do 200. I think there's a cap on it, but it'll show the last X number of debug logs the Ceph IDM spit out, which will usually be all the stuff from the serve loop. You can see them there, and then also I think they go into the manager. But just in general, like what I'm talking about here, obviously the logs will still exist, but we want to have something a bit more concise. It's easier to look at, see like what the servlet was doing in general. So like the debug logs, if you want like a more detailed view of what's going on, but just I think that overview would be super helpful. So, and maybe we even want like an easier command to get our last number of debug logs if that was possible. You know, we could hold a certain number of them for people as well.
Yeah, something like a Ceph config set command. I mean, we have that for other daemons where we, by MDS, so we just set that and yeah, the logs increase and then we can check out the MDS logs. I don't know, something like that.
Yeah, I think Ceph does have its own log level. But again, I think the problem isn't necessarily setting the log level, it's just people don't know where to find our logs. We have to do something to make them a bit more transparent.
Okay, so is that like a Ceph manager config set command? Is that what you're saying? Where you set the log level for Ceph ADM?
Yeah, I think there is like a config setting. I don't remember exactly off the top of my head, but it's like versus ceph-adm slash what it is. But we have our own log level, I believe. What's there? Oh, we did. Maybe we do just use one of the other ones actually. Yeah, I think we might actually fall under just the generic manager log level. That's what I was thinking of. Yeah, so it might actually just be part of one of the other ones, but we should probably maybe even consider adding one of those just specifically for ceph-adm. Maybe that's something that actually have as a new thing to do. Consider. Probably be good if we did do that then. But yeah, we'll add that to the list of things we want to do and make this more visible. To have some way to more customize specifically Ceph VDM's logs. So you set the level easier, and you can find them a bit easier as well. Do that. Does anyone have anything else? Want to, or I guess, yeah, want to open the floor now. Anything want to say about the logging or the transparency in the serve loop or anything? Maybe something they've run into that's been hard to find, or any ideas for how we do the debugging or anything like that.
Yeah, with respect to service events, I mean, we can filter by service name and service type. I do that when I try to figure out more logs for NFS service, for example. And maybe we need better documentation upstream for the config settings that you mentioned, Adam. Or maybe it's already there.
Yeah, it might just be in the wrong spot. I know even for the daemon the service events, like they're
Yeah, it's pretty scattered. Yeah, we need
yeah.
to make sure that each service, you mentioned that in each one of those services that you can use these Ceph org commands and filter by service name and service type. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. I think they're in the troubleshooting section somewhere, but I think they should be a bit more visible as well. I think that's probably part of the problem why people seem to not find these is they're not documented in like some more forward-facing spots where they probably should be because they're kind of important. We should do that as well. I guess I'll add that point here. That's good. Anything else? Anyone has comments? This sort of thing. If not, we move on to this is another topic on here that's actually pretty much in the same vein of transparency and everything.
Oops, I hit the wrong button. Sorry. As far as the previous one, I put my video on instead of unmuting. Just a curiosity question: is there a way to make any of the, make everything that comes back sort of actionable? Try to bring it down into like, go do this to take care of the problem versus, just leaving it sort of opaque. You know what I mean? Make everything. Try to do it in such a way that everything has an action. This happened. This is how you go fix it, kind of thing. Is that achievable, you think, or if that's a design goal, could we get further than we typically do?
I mean, in theory, as long as I guess the hard part would be knowing what to do in that situation. But we definitely, if we did know what to do, give a recommendation because the way we do it works right now is we just sort of log an event. And so we could also just easily log some other like recommendation what to do about the event there.
Yeah, because typically in the past, I mean, to make a product easy to use and usable, I mean, you've really got to try to get most things actionable. And if you fall into like a 1% category of things that you just throw your hands up and call support, I mean, that's not bad. I mean, it's better than probably where we're at today. A lot of our actions today, a lot of the events that occur are just like you scratch your head. I would still think today. I mean, maybe that should be just a goal. I would just try to achieve that.
Let me just add in on there for a second. So are you talking about you enter some command and you get an error code and it comes back and it says you need to do X before you do Y or something like that? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah. A good example to me of that is if you use the command line git. Git has a habit of telling you exactly what you need to do when you do something wrong.
Yeah. If we could achieve that, I think it would be awesome from a product perspective and a usability perspective.
I would have to agree with that. But the problem with Langos is being sure you know what the user is trying to do.
True. Yeah.
And that is the problem where, there's an error, but you don't know what the user is trying to do unless you came back and said, you either need to do A, B, or C. Something like that. I don't know. But I do agree that some helpful hints on error would be nice.
Yeah, I think one of the complexities is that some of the commands do the deployment of daemons asynchronously. For example, when you create an FS cluster or you create a Ceph volume, the command returns, but it shoots off asynchronous deployments. So I'm not sure how we want to handle that, where we deploy these different daemons asynchronously.
Yeah, that was one of the things I kind of wanted with this point, with like the history and everything. Um, Maybe we could like log, not log, but like something more easy to access than logs. Like that we just actually tried to deploy this daemon like this many seconds ago or whatever.
So one thing I would recommend, maybe not copying, but kind of taking for inspiration. When I debug problems with Kubernetes, the kubectl describe command is extremely helpful. It brings a lot of useful information about the state of a resource in one place. So that might solve the problem that you were just bringing up there, which is like, what's the state of this asynchronous thing?
Yeah, we can take a look
Yeah.
at that. I don't know much about command works myself.
Yeah, I wouldn't copy necessarily how it works, but more about the kinds of information it displays. We can talk more about the details offline.
Yeah. We'll definitely get into the details later. This is more just for like ideas. But that's a good place to look. If there is someone who's already doing something like this well, then definitely get some inspiration from there.
But if you do have a context of something at a larger level that you're trying to accomplish, and it fires off a whole bunch of asynchronous events, I mean, somehow you do have to keep track of that, know the history, and at the end of the day, if that larger context fails, then because of one of these other asynchronous events you did, then I would think that somehow you've got to make that connection. I mean, again, if that's all part of the conversation, I agree 100%. I mean, you absolutely have to be able to do that and hopefully make sense of it. And then from that, what's your course of action as a result? I mean, depending on maybe availability model, maybe there's absolutely nothing you have to do. Let the system recover eventually. Or if the service this thing you tried to do, a larger context doesn't work, then you have to, who knows what? I mean, make up your story here, but those are the kinds of things I think are very, very hard from a usability perspective.
Yeah, I think all these things sort of tie together where we need to be able to describe the asynchronous service or what's going on there. We need to be able to properly display errors when things do go wrong, and then we want to, if possible, give some recommendations for how to fix it. And you sort of do all those things together and improve the UX a lot. Because you could see like the history of what happened. You can see like the current state of your whatever asynchronous command you care about. And then you can see if it goes wrong and what you're supposed to do when it does go wrong. Then sort of have the whole workflow covered. So I guess we'll probably have to start with this.
Actually, Adam, do we have somehow some mechanism to get the history of comments that were issued in the CFDM?
We could theoretically track them at the orchestrator level. We could probably have some sort of decorator on our commands that just adds them to some list somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
It would, I guess, as long as they're only orchestrator commands. Like we can't. It's kind of hard to do it for anything that's not orchestrator command. Like if they just change the log level or just do some like random Rados gateway admin thing. Like we can't really see that, but we could try to track which orch commands they ran if we thought that was like a thing people would want. Know what they ran. I guess it could be useful actually if they are need debugging and we want to see what they did.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, rather than the commands, maybe log state changes, like up to some maybe limit, because you don't necessarily want to capture everything. But I don't think you want to log random, say, read-only commands. I've used a system that did that in the past, and it was just noise.
Yeah, I think there's already for our decorators for the CLI, I think there already is like a read versus a write one. I don't know if they've all been applied correctly, but there is something in place for like differentiating them. So maybe we could at least look there and see it now on our write ones particular. We could maybe log those somewhere so we know what people are doing. They could share them if they want.
Generic Ceph audit log that exists for general Ceph commands not sure if the SFADM commands are showing up there as well, but that might be a good place to include if they're not there already.
Right. Yeah, I'll add that to the list.
And yeah, and even in the audit log, we differentiate between read only and read write.
But yeah, we'll definitely want to look there then. And if you're already logging all the commands, that's definitely something we could maybe make use of. Because I know it's one of the harder things. Sometimes people have issues is, oh, what do they actually do to end up there?
Yeah, exactly. So if somebody reports some back, so can get the history of commits to see what he have issued before.
Yeah, that could be really helpful.
I have one other naive question. I mean, if we do have this, logging capability, audit capability, is a replay capability beneficial at all? You want to redo something. Is it easy? Is that something that would be helpful, or is that something that's just a little much?
Replaying like all the commands they ran.
Not all necessarily, but a group of, I mean, almost like a history kind of, CLI kind of thing. I don't know. Is it the right level to do it? Do you do it at a higher level? I don't know. I'm just bringing that up. Is it helpful at this level? I don't know. I'm just asking.
We have the history right now. If you use Control R, you can reapply some command from the history, but you can't apply like a lot of them. It's similar to Linux bash history.
Yeah, I can maybe see some use for it in like a recreating scenario if you want to like recreate something we did, but I think it would be sort of situational.
And my argument would be, why wouldn't I script it if it's the same set of commands?
Yeah, maybe at least StephADM might not be the place you want to do that. Because like we could get like the history of the commands really easily there, then maybe people could use it for making their automation or for doing the recreation. But I don't know if we want to implement something that actually StephADM does recreates the commands or whatever. Especially if there's non. Yep.
If you call CFDM shell and the command, then you can execute from outside. So you can create your scripts by calling CFDM shell and whatever you want to execute.
Yeah, some people do that. They'll use the shell in their scripts and everything. Right. Well, yeah, that was a lot of good stuff. I'm gonna move forward with that. Yeah, I'm interested to look at more of this generic logging stuff and make sure this StephADM related stuff is all in there. I'll have to give that all a closer look. If we could get some way to get those out and just use them, at least get all the StephADM related ones, maybe we can store them somewhere temporarily or whatever, just so we can have an easier time debugging when something goes wrong, figure out what people were up to. That'll be good. All right. Don't we have anything else I want to say on this sort of debugging stuff? Basically, this whole section here we were just talking about. Where to view failures, what should we be tracking that people are doing, and things like that. No.
It's a question of curiosity. Maybe out of the loop here, but I know there was some kind of events framework that SFADM was using to try to let the user know like what had happened in the past. Is that still useful for failure tracking in this kind of sense, or?
Yeah, so we were talking about it a little bit earlier. It's like one of these ones. Basically, when you look at like an RHPS or HLS output, and as long as you give it a format that isn't like the plain one, if that event or if that daemon or service has had an event happen, like something has gone wrong there, it'll show up. We were saying earlier is that the only problem with that is people tend not to define them or not look there. I think it might just be like too hard to find. And also just like the level of granularity where you have to specifically go out of your way to like, look, I want to check if something happened with this service. It might be too hard, or we might need some more general way of finding all these events. So they are there, but it's just they don't seem to be super visible right now. So we wanted to increase the visibility as part of this work.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thanks.
All right. First we move on to the next thing we have on here. So this one again, it's actually just in the same vein of what we were just talking about, which is an upgrade history. So one of the things that hasn't been great with the way the upgrade works is when it ends, the whole like upgrade status that you can kind of use to track how it's going the whole time just goes away, and it says it's not in progress anymore. But if we had an upgrade history sort of thing going, then we could, after you see an upgrade no longer says it's in progress anymore, instead of just hoping that it's all worked and it's all good, you could check the upgrade history. You could see what we claimed we did and everything.
This is
So
this is like a command line thing, or is it a separate log file?
this would be like a command line thing. This is the idea, is we just have like a log of saying like something pretty quick, like we just completed a upgrade of like these daemons to this version at this time. You could see sort of what's happened recently.
Okay.
I'm sure this stuff could be found in the logs already, but again, it's just super hard to find right now. So we want to have a command line that just say if you've done multiple upgrades, as long as there's not like too many of them, we could just store them somewhere, and then you could see what upgrades have happened in the cluster recently. Again, just falls in the same vein of all this stuff of we're just trying to make things that happen asynchronously more visible, because upgrade is one of those things that we do in the background. We try to fire it off, and then it just goes. And some ways nicer just have some better tracking of what happened with those things. And there is some work already going on. Like I said, it'll end up in R at some point. But plan to go into earlier versions as well to make the upgrade. So you can split it up. So you don't have to do the whole thing at once, which will make this a bit nicer. You'll just be able to upgrade, say, just all the demons on this, or all the demons of this type on this host or whatever, something like that. But even that doesn't take away from the usefulness of having a history like this, where you could have some way of seeing all the upgrades that happened, so you know like when this was upgraded and when it finished and everything. That could be useful for people. So does anyone have anything you want to say about that upgrade history? What could be useful to be there? What things should be tracked? Anything like that?
I don't have anything really to say there, but it might be, yeah, again, it might be nice just to be able to say upgrade history, and it tells you what happened and when it happened.
Yeah, that's sort of the idea we were going for, is just some way to see what those things were.
I think in terms of the summary, I think it does a pretty good job of like, how many demons have been upgraded and, what is it working on next, but which exact demon is it upgrading? I don't think there's a way to look at that, right, Adam?
Yeah, it'll tell you what type of demon it's upgrading, but it won't
Yeah.
tell you which one in particular.
Yep, I think that's what I've noticed.
Maybe we could even add, I don't think I have a section in here for just the upgrade status. That would be a kind of increased granularity. Like that. Something we could also do. I said right now it's pretty high level, is it just does which type we're doing. And I think that's really it. Unless it's like pulling an image or something, it'll tell you that. But other than that, it's basically just which demon type we're currently looking at. So we can make some improvements there.
And as part of the history, Adam, are you planning to add something like the date, the original version, the final version?
So what I have on here right now is which version it upgraded to and when it finished. Maybe the previous version could be something as well. I mean, I haven't finalized what needs to be in the history. And we definitely would have which version you upgrade to and when it finished. Those are the ones that seem super obvious, but I don't think I've nailed down exactly.
So are you planning to only keep the last upgrade version, or to get like more extended history of the upgrades on some cluster?
I think I could go back a few. I mean, it's not like there's something that's going to happen super frequently, typically.
How
Like
often?
the last 3 upgrades.
Yeah, but how often does somebody upgrade? Well, you might be upgrading within let's say, within Pacific or within Nautilus or whatever. Is that what we're talking about? for upgrades? Is that you would say Nautilus X to Nautilus Y, or is this more meant to be Nautilus to Pacific kind of history?
I mean, it could be for either. It's just supposed to be more of a very generic.
Yeah,
Whatever you do.
I'm more apt to upgrade within within, let's say, Nautilus or something like that than I am. I wouldn't very often go, a major branch jump. I mean, that would be something that I would think that would be every couple of years. But within the branch, upgrades are more common. When bug fixes come out and you upgrade.
Yeah, might be more important to keep track of it across minor versions or something.
Yeah.
At least you can know, like, when did I get to this version that has this bug fix? You can see the exact date when that upgrade finished.
That is because a customer may be complaining about something fixed and
Yeah,
or
could be useful for
oh
something like
shit,
that.
they're a rev behind.
Yeah, and this could be useful also to get more information about the status. Maybe some bug only happens in some rare upgrade scenario, so it will be more information for the developer to reproduce the same issue as the customer.
Yeah,
I assume this information is just going to be maintained in some sort of a text file or something like that. You're just kind of.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's gonna be some like very much information. It'll probably be like a few lines upgrade. I'm not sure exactly the technical side where we're gonna put it and everything yet, but shouldn't be too much. So I don't think it'll matter where it is really. We'll have to see. Yeah, but mostly what it's discussing about here is just sort of what needs to be in there. How far back you want to go. That's another thing, I guess. Is it useful to know back like 3 or 4 upgrades? You only need to know the last like 2, like stuff like that, like high level stuff. But it seems like in general, it's going to be a good idea. And we can try to hash out some of these details at some point.
Start out simple and change it.
Yeah. All right. Anything else want to say about the upgrade history? All right. And we just talked about the status improvements. So we go to the binary refactoring. I mentioned this earlier. There's a pull request here. It's linked if anyone wants to look at it. It's been outstanding for a pretty long time now. Sort of what happened with that is it was almost done, close to the Quincy release, but we sort of agreed to something that we wouldn't be able to get it done in time for the Quincy release, and it was too big of a change to be a minor release thing, because it would sort of change how you get access to the binary and everything. And so we wanted that to be something that's only done on a major release. So we sort of pushed it back. And so basically what it allows us to do is right now the binary is just one really large file, like 8,000 lines or so right now, and it makes it hard to work with a lot of the time. It's sort of stuck in that form for sort of technical reasons. We reuse it right now. But the work in this pull request here was giving us a way to split it up and still make use of it properly.
To be clear, it's the first step. It's not actually splitting anything. It's just making the binary out of components. Those components are almost the same as the original. Yeah. Correct me if I'm right.
That's true. Yeah, it doesn't actually do any of the refactoring or anything. It just gives us the power to do so in the future. Yeah.
Step 0, if you.
Yeah. So the idea was try to get back to that sort of late in the year and see if we can get it really ready, like right before sort of R comes out, and sort of get that in, and then do some refactoring like the month or 2 before the R release, and then we can have R sort of come out with this new refactored version, and however we're going to distribute that and everything will be something new for that release, and then like Q and earlier, we'll just use the old sort of system of just the one big script file. That was the idea there. This is something we've been trying to do for a while now. This goes back to, I think even when Pacific was the newest, or no, even when before Pacific came out, I think we already sort of some discussion of being able to refactor this, but it's just something that's never been able to get in for one reason or another. And it's kind of hard because it's a big change that it sort of needs to be a major release thing. Yeah, I'm not sure there's much more to say about that. We have some details about how we're going to split it up in here, I guess, but that's not super important, I think, for this. That's a really sort of developer level like implementation thing. It's not like a big idea. Don't really go into that stuff right now. But that is something we definitely plan to do for R. So does anyone have anything they want to say about the binary refactoring or any of that? This is kind of like a random topic that's more technical. In that case, we can keep going here. And so this point here is more of a generic point about just continuing to sort of do what CephDM is supposed to do, which is simplify workflows, make them a bit easier. And so this was just sort of a starting list on things we plan to do that for. So we have here setting the monitoring stack images. Anyone who's changed their monitoring stack images by default or from the defaults sort of might know this process with CephDM where you have to sort of change the config option. And then if you change the config option, you have to then go like redeploy the daemon. So it's not like a super complex process or anything, but it's one of those things that it would be pretty straightforward to automate. Just have one command said like I want my monitoring stack, this like my Prometheus daemons on this image. Then we should just be able to handle that for you and set the image and make sure the daemons get redeployed and all that. So there's no real reason for us to force you to do all these extra steps. We should be able to sort of automate that for you. So that's something we want to do. One of those processes we want to automate. And RW multi-site stuff is something that almost happened a long time ago and then it didn't happen. It's something we're going to want to bring back up. Hopefully now that we have some more time to look into it. Just having some way to make the deployment of RW multi-site easier. CephDM does have the power to run those like Rados gateway admin commands and everything. So like say all those steps for like setting up the realm and the zones and all that. If we gave them with a good format for like a proper YAML you could provide to specify everything you need for multi-site, theoretically CephDM could sort of handle that for you, make sure those things get created correctly and set up some of that for you. So that's one of the workflows you want to automate. We're probably be trying to work with the RGW team and get some of that stuff in as well.
You know my question, why CLI and just not work with dashboard and put it in dashboard? Add value there. You know, I wouldn't do it in the CLI personally, but I know this. I know that's probably not a popular statement here, but I just think that's what we should do.
I would add in anything you could put into the dashboard, the better.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to do this as like an alternative to the dashboard. Honestly, if it worked properly in the CLI, then the dashboard could even make use of that to some degree. It's not like it's anything we do in CephDM the dashboard can't make use of at all. So I feel like having it here wouldn't take away from that.
Well, again, with limited resource, I mean, a dashboard first would be my preference, and CLI second. But I just as always, I wanted to bring that up.
I would be a proponent of always having both, but it needs to be in the dashboard. So anyway, so other people can use it other than me.
Yeah. Yeah, that is one of the workflows. Either way, maybe we're thinking about it. Getting that in. I know some people have wanted that. Yeah, and again, we tried to do it before, and we hadn't gotten it working. I think it got removed a while ago. And then even if we got this sort of working here, that sort of work that could help get it working in the dashboard as well. It's not like it would only help for CephDM. We could sort of either they can make use of it directly, or we could sort of copy sort of the ideas from one place to another if we figure out a good format for doing that stuff. So I think maybe there could even be some collaboration there when setting this stuff up to make sure it's working in both places. So yeah, again, it's something we want to do. So I'll open it up again if anyone wants to say anything about either these workflows, any comments on these in particular, or if there's anything else you think that it would be nice if it was automated that's not currently automated, something like that. So. Anything anyone wants to say on that stuff? It doesn't sound like we have anything there. So, in that case, yeah, over the course of the next few months as well, if anyone comes up with anything, reach out to me on like the IRC channel or anything, the Ceph Orchestrators one, or anywhere else, and pose those ideas there. We can see if we can look into adding stuff like that. This is sort of the next one of the next steps in Ceph ADM is the power to maybe do some of these slightly more complicated workflows now that we have a lot of the basic stuff sort of going. Right. And so the last point we have on here so far is this disconnected environment stuff. So we have some basic documentation and whatever for how you handle disconnected environments, but this point is basically just that we want to give this a bit more attention over the R release, do a bit more testing around disconnected environments and all that. So yeah, I know we have some documents that tell you should like set up a private registry and whatever, and there might be like a config option or two we tell you to change. But there's not a lot of like testing around it, and I think maybe we could. This is maybe one of these things again we could like automate certain parts of it. And we have on here is a sort of sub points. This came up when we were talking about it last week. The idea of maybe deploying a registry, but we sort of decided against it. I don't really know if we want to have Ceph ADM managing registries like that. It might be a bit of an overstep for what Ceph ADM is meant to be. Didn't really want to do that, but for the other things in general, making sure that as long as you have the registry set up, that having a disconnected environment that is built on top of that private registry is a smooth process. Because we know a lot of people use these disconnected environments, so it would be good to make sure all that stuff works well. Yeah, so there's not a lot of specifics there right now. It's more of a big idea, I guess, what you want to do. So, does anyone have any comments on that one? Anything they want to say about disconnected environments, things that they've found that are difficult with Ceph ADM disconnected environments, or things that can be improved there? They have used them. All right, it doesn't sound like it. So in that case, yeah, it was something we're doing anyway. So if you do use connected stuff, you look out for that stuff in R. We'll hopefully have a few small improvements, making that a bit smoother. So that was the last topic we had come up with so far for what we want to do for R. There's already a decent number of things in here. Does anybody just in general have any comments they want to give or ideas that we should be trying to look to do in R? Totally open.
Just an overall comment. This is actually an interesting list because it looks like it's more about stabilization. There's not anything major new, I guess I'd say. It's all about refinement, stabilization, making the product more usable. I think it's all good. It's so that's I think a good sign of where we're at. One of those things I guess would be missing in my mind from that kind of stabilization. We don't have anything about performance and scale here. Is there some work we need to do there to try to drive that to a different level, and see where we can go? What happens when you get to huge node counts, huge, drive counts? I mean, whatever. I mean, that'd be the only thing. It's another stabilization, evolution, polish kind of thing, moving forward. I mean, is that fair assessment?
Yeah, I think that's definitely something that's like a good thing to bring up. I know we had a little bit.
But the overall assessment about where we're at. I mean, it's like there's nothing like shockingly major new here. It's like it's all about polishing, refinement. Making it more a more stable, better product. I mean, so I guess that's sort of the interesting point as well. I think. I mean,
and that is all good. Stabilization, making it easier, great.
For sure.
Yeah,
for sure.
I performance at scale. I assume you're talking about if you're going out to, I don't know, hundreds of nodes or hundreds of data nodes. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. I will admit that I'm topped out right at I'm gonna call me myself a more small guy because I got topped out at about 40 data nodes. Uh, but certainly some sort of performance metrics. I don't know.
Yeah, I know the trouble's been recently is we've been trying to do some testing at scale, but again, you need like the hardware to do stuff like that. So on a couple occasions, we've been able to get some good hardware for that stuff. Like there was the Posy Lab, got access to for a while. We had some good stuff there. There's actually a bunch of different these bug fixes and everything that came out of that one, just because there are certain things that only seem to pop up when you got to big scale. And then there's the Giba cluster that's going right now that at least has a decent amount of stuff.
Having real world clusters to test with is, yes, that's an absolute problem. I will say my biggest deployment is at a customer site, and I can't mess with the customer system. It's an operational system, so yeah, and I can't afford, I'll say to duplicate their system.
Yeah. But it is something we have gotten some work on, and there has been a 2 or 3 instances now. There is a presentation on it. I don't know if that presentation came out yet. I don't remember. There's a whole set of slides and everything on our scale testing and all the things.
I think it has a clear section for what we have done with Giba, Posy, and the other stuff that Paul also did. It's going to be ready once the Quincy release goes out.
Okay. Yeah, so I guess there will be a presentation, I guess around the Quincy release of the testing we've done so far with the scale performance and sort of what we're able to achieve currently and when we start running the problems and those things. But it is something definitely, once things are functionally stable, the performance on large scales is something we want to look at for Ceph VDM. And the problem is always finding consistent ways to test it and everything. And also, I think part of the scale performance stuff ends up being not Ceph VDM specifically, but just the manager itself. I know when we did the Posy testing stage, did a bit of refactoring on the lock handling in the manager. So maybe some changes there as well if you want to improve performance at that point. So it's all things we'll have to start looking into as things get a bit more stable. Yeah, that'll all be good. It is definitely a point we should start looking at. Well, if we're going to be talking about stabilization and stuff, then yeah, scale performance is something that should become a big topic. All right, is there anything else? Yeah, I know we're sort of nearing the end of our time slot, I believe. So.
Yeah, I've got a question, Adam. It's about, I remember we talked about this a while ago. Is there any update on the scheduling of service or daemon scheduling for Ceph VDM? Right now it's kind of static, right? So I remember we identified some piece of work for the dashboard to, so basically to somehow balance the resources or the daemons and the services across the cluster, right? So is there any plans to upgrade that or improve that, the scheduler for Ceph VDM?
Can you elaborate a bit? Like, I don't remember the conversation referencing the scheduling.
Yeah, maybe it was with Sebastian. Yeah, basically, right now we have the placement, right, which is kind of static. You can still use the count and the labels, which ensure some kind of high availability. But for avoiding hotspot and distributing the load of the different services across the cluster, I think we were talking about some kind of smart dynamic scheduler for Ceph VDM. So basically, based on CPU and memory, it would try to balance the services across the different hosts. So any plans for that?
I don't think. I know what you're talking about. I know there was at some point there was talked about us doing that, but I don't think any work's happened on it in some time, if I'm being honest. I think we're calling it resource aware scheduling. Basically, the idea was just that all things equal, like if there's multiple hosts we could choose from where to put something, we would actually check their resources and everything, and make our decisions based off of that. But yeah, I don't think a lot of work has happened so far. Is this something we could start looking into for R? Because it was something we planned some time ago to start looking at. And I think we have the means of gathering all the host metrics now. We have that gather facts and everything that we didn't have like a year ago. that could all be used to make these sort of calls. So it's definitely something that we can start looking into for R. But yeah, if I'm being honest, I don't think much work has happened on that anytime recently, what I know.
Okay, thanks.
Right, thanks, Ernesto. All right, does anyone have anything else to talk about? Last minute or so. Nope. All right, in that case, thanks everybody for coming. We have our sort of a good list of topics here, I think. So there's some good discussion. Yeah, so that's our planning.
All right. Well, thanks a lot. It was a good discussion.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
thank
yeah,
you, Charlie.
thanks. Yeah, thanks everyone for coming, and enjoy your day. See you guys later.